As I've already stated several times on this channel, Chainsaw Man is my favorite manga and one of my favorite things ever, and I'm the type of person that immediately looks up the people responsible for the stuff I love. So I learned that Chainsaw Man was drawn and written by Tatsuki Fujimoto. I looked at an overview of his works and the only other full series created by him was Fire Punch. So of course I didn't read it and proceeded to reread Chainsaw Man instead. A few months later, Fujimoto released the one-shot Look Back. I've read it and acknowledged, of course it's awesome, and then I reread Chainsaw Man for the third time. Another time skip later, I finally decided to read Fire Punch. Going into it, I knew almost nothing about it. The only thing I've seen of it is the panel, since it almost made the jump into mainstream weeb memes, but that's it. I had no idea about the genre, plot, or characters. And now that I have read it, I'm not so sure I'm much wiser regarding those things. But I wanna talk about it, so let's get into it. This is gonna be mostly spoiler free, but I'll need to spoiler the first chapter just so I have a baseline to work off of. This whole thing takes place in a world where some people get born with something called miracles. That's just a fancy word for superpower. Devil fruit, quirk, jutsu, you get the point. And the legend goes that one day a girl got a miracle that let her control ice, and she pretty much put the entire planet into the ice age. A few hundred years later, we follow the siblings Agni and Luna. They both have the miracle of regeneration. It's a pretty common one. The brothers' version is a lot more powerful though. So they arrived in a new village, and in order to gain the people's trust, Agni cuts off his arm every few days and feeds it to the villagers. Cannibalism in a time like that makes sense and works really well thanks to the regeneration. While Agni is out hunting, the village gets raided by a group belonging to the city of... you can read it yourself. Their leader finds out the village practices cannibalism and burns it down with his fire miracle. Everybody, including Luna, dies except for Agni. His regeneration is so strong that he manages to hang on. The problem is though that the guy's fire has the trait of burning until the target is burned to a crisp, kinda like the Amaterasu from Naruto. That combined with insane regeneration results in a man that's constantly on fire. Agnes's body spends a few years adjusting to the new hot situation, and once that's done, he sets out with the goal to take revenge, of course. That's the setup, and it's not exactly unique, is it? You have consumed several stories with somewhat similar beginnings. But once all of those things were set up, things start getting crazy. This is not a revenge story at all. Maybe for like 15 chapters, but that's it. Because the thing about this manga is, every few chapters something absolutely insane happens which changes the cast of characters, the goal of the MC, and the themes of the story. Pretty much everything gets put on its head. While that is cool, it also is kinda jarring. You start adjusting to a new environment just for everything to change. The worst thing about it is the constant change of Agnes's goal. He feels aimless, so the story feels aimless, which results in the reading experience feeling kinda meaningless. I didn't even try to think about what could happen, I just sat there absorbing what is actually happening. Pretty early on, you'll also notice that the manga is not holding back any punches. Chainsaw Man was published in Shonen Jump, and throughout its entire run you could feel how it's about to break out of the shonen chains. Since it's a magazine for teenagers, you can't put in some of the darker stuff. Fire Punch did not have those restrictions. You have rape, pedophilia, slavery, bestiality, transgender, incest, a lot of heavy topics, and I'm all for it. I believe there is nothing that fiction can touch upon. But it would have been cool if all of those things would have been used in a meaningful way. Tatsuki Fujimoto is a pretty young guy, and this was his first full story. The feeling I've gotten from this manga is that he had a lot of ideas in his head since high school or something, and he just squeezed everything into this manga, but in the process forgot to transform these ideas into a coherent plot. Chainsaw Man handled that way better. There he chose a set amount of themes and wrote the plot and characters around those. In Fire Punch it feels like let's just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. Around halfway through the story we seemingly get the main villain revealed. She held a typical antagonist speech before Agni, and a few chapters later she gets a whole chapter where she explains some stuff, and the last panel is just her straight up dropping her goal. So of course she isn't the main villain. We don't see her for a long time, and then she just gets randomly killed off by a minor character. But around the time where she exposition dumps we get the legendary panel. Without context this is already an amazing expression. Its meme potential is nowhere near to fully explored. But now that I have the context, my feelings on it are quite different. When I did the page turn and saw this, I thought I'm looking into a mirror. While reading the 20 pages leading up to this, I constantly ask myself, what the fuck is going on? Absolute insanity was happening, and just as my brain was about to overload, I get this. Either my brain is completely fried already, or this is just Fujimoto making fun of himself. But hey, whatever this panel is supposed to mean, I don't care, I love it. After that begins the second half of the story and it's a lot more coherent, but that doesn't mean it gets much easier to understand. Agni finally starts feeling like a character with a sad personality who doesn't just follow orders. We get an environment and characters which we spend time with. But as I was realizing that, I also noticed that it was kinda losing me. Everything became more by the numbers, including the ending, unfortunately. While reading the first half, I was constantly wondering, where is this going? What is the final chapter gonna be like? What's gonna be the message behind all this insanity? And a few hours later, I read the final chapter and was like, oh, okay. It's very tame, and well, I wouldn't call it wholesome, but let's just say it's nothing like humans are evil and a disease for the planet. Sure, it's presented in a crazy way, but it's still pretty simple, which left me kinda disappointed. I love the ending of Chainsaw Man and feel like it's been built up really well. You can go from chapter 1 to 97 and it's a somewhat straight line of plot progression. With Fire Punch, it looks more like this. It didn't feel deserved, more like Fujimoto wanted to end it and just chose something that was available. God, it feels stupid tiptoeing around the spoilers like that. But yeah, the question is this manga good? Can I recommend it? Well, what's your definition of good? Is it something like Steins Gate or Berserk? A well thought out story with amazing characters? Then, I don't know, you might wanna avoid Fire Punch. But if you're like me and you can also appreciate more unorthodox stories where not everything makes sense, then I'd say you should give it a go, especially if you like Chainsaw Man, because it has the exact same Tatsuki Fujimoto energy of insanity. That being said though, I am extremely excited for Chainsaw Man Part 2 now. It isn't chained down by the shonen restrictions anymore. A little bit scared as well, but mostly excited.